Along the western shores of the Central American republics, around the Galapagos Islands, and on many other tuna banks in far Pacific waters, hundreds of American fishermen are continuously reaping a rich harvest from the ocean's depths. Tuna fishing and packing are major industries, employing thousands of workers, and annually supply the world's markets with millions of cases of this healthful and popular item of food. But let's start at the beginning, at the Southern California port of San Diego. San Diego harbors one of the largest fishing fleets in the world. Hundreds of small fishing boats fish the nearby waters the year round to supply the local markets with thousands of tons of seafood. The Westgate Sea Products Company operates a large fleet of fishing boats that ply in and out of this beautiful port. Included in the fleet are many of the ultra-modern seagoing clippers that cruise far into the South Pacific to the vast and rich fishing banks that lie in a rough triangle between Acapulco, the Galapagos Islands, and the coast of Ecuador. Captain Joe Alioto is skipper of the smart and fast tuna clipper Queen Victoria, which is now nearing completion in the shipyard. Joe is discussing construction plans with Jim Lane, official of the Westgate Sea Products Company, tuna packers and a friend to countless fishermen. The Westgate Company is interested in the same things that appeal to Captain Joe: efficiency of ship operation and maximum protection of the tuna catch. Maury Rankin, the engineer, joins the discussion. His primary interest is in diesel engines and refrigeration machinery. His job is to get the Queen to the distant fishing banks and back again with the tons of tuna in perfect condition. San Diego has a number of excellent shipyards, and in one of these, the Queen Victoria towers between the sides of her cradle, while scores of workmen hammer and weld, wire and fit, paint and polish from bow to stern. Captain Alioto and Engineer Rankin are busy inspecting their ship and making a few changes and adjustments that past experience has suggested. Days and weeks pass, and the combined skill and energy of many men have almost completed another instrument of human ingenuity. The Queen Victoria is ready for her launching ceremonies. Relatives, friends, and fellow San Diegans join with Joe Alioto and his crew to celebrate this momentous occasion. Speeches by shipbuilders and civic leaders precede the christening, and then the Queen Victoria is started down the ways to salt water with cheers from the crowd. The actual launching is an exciting event, the ship gliding down the ways backward until her tons of steel and wood are supported by the sea. Here, her graceful lines and beautiful trimmings show her to be indeed a $400,000 Queen of the Waves. After the trial runs have proven that the ship is ready for her maiden voyage, her skipper orders his crew aboard. There's work to do. While thousands of gallons of fresh water are pouring into her storage tanks, truck after truck bring up supplies of every kind, from the best beef to ice cream. The entire crew is busy stowing away the foodstuffs that may have to last them for months. Fishing is always a gamble against time. Occasionally, a lucky ship will return fully loaded in 5 to 6 weeks, but the weeks may stretch into months, and ample provision must be made for a cruise of maximum duration. Salt is an important item because it is necessary to the freezing process. Tons of bagged salt are loaded and eventually stored below decks. The giant diesel engines of more than 800 horsepower will require from 40 to 50,000 gallons of fuel oil. At her regular cruising speed, the engines will consume about 1,000 gallons every 24 hours. One of the final acts of loading is putting aboard new bamboo fishing poles. Then follow the large tanks of ammonia that are required for freezing the fish. The Queen Victoria depends on its fine refrigeration system to bring 350 tons of tuna home safely from the tropics. Beneath an intense blue sky, the trim white ship is sailing southward over a calm sea, and life on board follows an unhurried but definite pattern. The navigator takes one of the ship's daily positions at high noon when the sun crosses the meridian. He then computes the mileage traveled and verifies their exact location on the ocean. The radio operator talks in Morse code or by radiophone to coastal stations and to other ships, inquiring about weather predictions and fishing conditions at the tuna banks. In the chart room, the captain and navigator check their position and, based on reports gathered by the radio operator, make any necessary changes in the course ahead. Careful navigation saves time and money and assures the safety of ship and crew. Below decks in the engine room, the powerful diesels hum with a steady rhythm hour after hour, propelling the Queen Victoria ever southward to tropical waters and a finny harvest. On deck, all hands are busy repairing nets and fishing tackle, for the catching of tuna requires special equipment as well as skill. Sockets are formed from old tires or rope to hold the butts of the bamboo poles and to protect the men when the heavy fish are pulled from the water. Some crew members are trimming and wrapping the tough fishing poles, while others are attaching 4-foot lines of 120 thread cord to 8 and 10-foot poles of select bamboo. A swivel is tied to the line, and then a 4-foot leader of piano wire is added. At the end of the wire is attached a feathered jig called a squid. Beneath the white feathers of the squid is concealed a barbless hook. Later we shall see how each fish is hooked separately by the tuna fishermen. After about 10 days at sea, the ship puts into the Gulf of Fonseca on the coast of El Salvador. Here the crew will catch bait from the abundant schools of small fish that live in these shallow and warm coastal waters. The bait net is lowered into a skiff, and the ship's power launch tows this skiff and a smaller one to the schools of fish. Flocks of wildly screeching seabirds circle above the boats. One end of the 250-foot net is anchored to the smaller skiff. Then the launch pulls the skiff carrying the net in a wide circle around the fish as the men pay out the net, catching thousands of anchovetas in one set. The captured bait is then scooped into the special tanks and wells of the ship. Before any tuna fishing can begin, these tanks and wells must be filled with live bait. 12-inch pipes circulate more than 4,000 gallons of fresh seawater each minute through the wells to keep the anchovetas or sardines alive and healthy. Catching bait is costly in time and money. Expensive permits must be obtained from the country in whose waters the bait is taken, and sometimes it requires weeks to catch the necessary anchovetas or other small fish. Later on, as the tuna catch fills the regular storage wells, these bait tanks will be emptied and filled with tuna. Special refrigeration tubes make these tanks into freezers for the last of the catch. Now, with a full load of live bait, the nets and small boats are hoisted aboard the Queen Victoria, and her course is set for the fishing grounds. As the ship approaches the banks where the tuna feed, the entire crew prepares for immediate action. The captain and lookouts watch for signs of a school, which may be indicated by circling birds or thrashing water. The main lookout, high on the mast, watches far ahead, and suddenly he sees a school of playful porpoise racing toward him. Porpoise are an unusual mammal of the sea. Here on the banks, they swim above the schools of tuna like a fighter squadron over bombers. The presence of porpoise is likely evidence that tuna are nearby. The lookout reports to the captain below, and soon other spotters see the porpoise. Now real action begins. Men hurry to their places on the fishing racks, special iron platforms that hang over the ship's side to place the fishermen closer to the water. Here, two men are fishing from each rack. In this way, they're able to help one another when the need arises. As the poles are lowered, the feathered squid dance along the surface of the water among the live anchovetas that the chummer throws amidst the excited school. The hungry tuna swallows whatever catches its eye, and the dancing squid gets its fair share of strikes, keeping the men working at top speed until the school stops biting or leaves. The captain watches the movements of the school of tuna and keeps the ship in the best position for the fishermen. By working close to the water with short lines, the commercial fishermen acquire distinctive skill and the great speed needed to take full advantage of each school. Chummers work like machines, throwing out handfuls of live bait to keep the tuna excited and within range of the fishing pole. If the tuna refuse to strike the squid, then live bait is attached to barbless hooks. Tuna generally run in schools of nearly uniform size. If they average less than 40 pounds, one pole fishing is employed. But when the fish run above this weight, the landing of such fighters requires the strength of more than one man. In these cases, 2, 3, or even 4 poles are attached to a single leader and squid, so that when a large fish is hooked, the men, working in perfect unison, pull the struggling giant on deck. Once the tuna is safely over the rail, the line is slackened and the barbless hook slips from its mouth. Soon the deck is a mass of glistening fish, which are ignored until the fishing of that school is ended. After the fishing has ceased, there's still much work to be done. The catch is transferred to the storage wells where refrigerated brine is circulated to quick freeze the tuna. On successful trips, many schools of tuna must be fished before the last storage wells are full, and the captain can make preparations for the return trip. When the maximum possible load has been secured, the radio operator signals the Westgate office that a cargo is aboard and the approximate day they'll reach San Diego. After the final catch has been stowed away and the ship thoroughly cleaned, Captain Alioto orders Engineer Rankin to put the diesel engines up to full cruising speed. The Queen Victoria is homeward bound. When the ship has arrived safely in port, the fishermen once again don their work clothes and rubber boots. They now have the heavy task of removing the frozen tuna from the refrigerator.